Welcome to Vanishing Gates. I am Jay, your host into the strange and the unexplained, the supernatural, the creepy, true crime, the sometimes comedic, the not so often as serious as we would like to be. But we're back in that October mood again as we continue this series on things that are a little darker in nature. Before we get into this, though, this is going to be a multi-part series. I live in Northern California, and as some of you may know, for some reason the power just keeps getting turned off by PG&E, our overlords of electricity. So I wanted to record at least one episode this weekend before we go dark. There's rumors we'll be dark through Wednesday, so I will air this tonight on the podcast. I can never speak. On the podcasting channel, on all the channels, podcasting sites, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'll also put this copy up on Facebook, and hopefully I'll be able to get part 2 of this. This will at least be a 2-part series. So bear with me on this one. I'm going to be kind of, again, reading from my notes because I'm trying to give you guys a little more information. I'm better at just spitballing and talking without looking at notes so much than bullet points. Bullet points, and I can just fire off. So I got a combination of bullet points and talking points here and serious notes because I want to have a little more information for you guys on this because it seems really interesting. So, and we're going to get to the meat and potatoes now. In 1941, Lon Chaney Jr. startles the world, and he becomes one of the greatest of horror movie icons, and he is transformed in the cinema into the Wolfman. One of the greatest films. I love the old black and white horror films. They're just some of the coolest things. They maintain to this day. They might not be as so as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, the horror films I grew up with, that were coming out, were a lot more graphic. It was a totally different mindset, but they were never as scary as the old black and white films for some reason. I've never figured that out why. And aside from the movie Alien or Aliens, those are freaking awesome and horrifying movies. If you really sit down and you're by yourself, that's some creepy stuff. But the black and white movies, for some reason, like the Frankenstein, the Mummy, Dracula, and the Wolfman, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, even that gave me nightmares as a child. And I had watched all sorts of other way more quote frightening films. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a lack of color there. Maybe they did things differently. I'm not certain. But so in the film, Lon Chaney plays Larry Talbot, and he's heading to Wales, where his family's from, and he's trying to make amends with his estranged dad. And I'm just going to give you a very brief. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's a great film. He wants to make amends again, guys. I apologize. Wants to make amends with his estranged dad, and during that time, he falls for this girl Gwen, and I think that she gives him. I can't remember where he gets it, but he gets this wolf head cane. And this whole time they're talking about werewolves. People are chanting and poetic rituals and whatnot. And I can't remember the entire thing. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember during the time. Gwen's friend gets attacked by a wolf, and Larry Talbot takes the wolf down with this wolf head cane. But in the meantime, he gets bit, and he comes across some gypsy fortune teller gal who explains to him that the wolf wasn't actually a wolf. It was her son, played by, of all people, Bela Lugosi. And I think the character's name's actually Bella in the film. It's been a long time. And now that he's been bitten by this afflicted person and he lived, he's now going to be a werewolf, or he'll turn into a wolf anyway. It's not really a surprise we make a horror movie about people turning into wolves. I mean, it goes back a long ways. Publius Ovidius Nas, or Ovid, I'm sure I'm not saying his name, Nazi. Anyway, Ovid, as most of us call him in the English. He wrote a poem called Metamorphosis, also known as the Transformation, obviously Metamorphosis, Transformation. And in it, he tells us the tale of Lycaon of Arcadia. In this part, I'm reading my notes, obviously. A king who had the audacity to serve Zeus. This guy thought he wanted to test Zeus's ability to know all. So he actually killed his own kid. What was his kid's name? Nyctimus. So he kills Nyctimus, cooks him up, and goes to serve him to Zeus to see if Zeus would catch on. It's Zeus, bro. It's Zeus. So atrocities, atrocities, atrocities. The guy was a terrible person in general, obviously. I mean, he had the audacity in general to challenge Zeus, and then he also murdered and tried to feed Zeus his son. So as punishment, Zeus actually turns him into a wolf. So you can probably tell this is going to be part of a series on werewolves. Yeah, and dog-like monster creatures. Uh, Dogs and men have a really interesting history together. They're known as our best friend, man's best friend. Dogs are pretty awesome. If you're a cat person, don't hate me. It's not my fault. I didn't come up with the adagem. I'm going to tell you what, if you're dying, or if you die in your home and you have cats, and you have a dog will wait for a while before it eats your body before it starves. A cat will eat you like the next day. So just put that out there. No hate on cats. They're just nature's jerks. So now it's not just. I wanted to bring this up to start because we're going to get more into the transformative stuff, but I want to talk about a few different cryptids and creatures and plausibilities before we get into probably on the next installment of this about the actual werewolf transformation and whatnot. So I want to explore some other monsters. And a lot of this is going to be notes that I pulled, and so I'll let you know if I pulled it from a source directly or if it's something I typed out. This is something I typed out. So let's talk about the waheela. It's a wolf-like cryptid reported from the Nahanni Valley in the Northwest Territories of Canada. It's also been reported in areas of Michigan and Alaska. Now, cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson, I think it's Ivan Sanderson, I can't believe I said even, good grief, thought the waheela might represent a thought to be extinct population of I'm gonna butcher this one, guys. Amphicyonids. Amphicyonids. There we go. We'll get it once in a while. Prehistoric dog bears, if you will. First of all, that's pretty freaking intense. Dog bears? Have you seen a bear in person? They're not small. Dogs are, frightening enough to some people, but dog bears? That's preposterous. Those things are huge. Can you imagine a dog bear? I mean, I've seen like chow chows and malamutes and huge dogs. That's a big freaking dog, and it's a bear. Anyway, it's also similar to the amorak, a giant wolf from the Inuit mythology. It's reported to travel in groups of 2 or 3 and not in the large packs that modern wolves travel in. So we already have a pseudo lone hunter style. And that's intimidating because you think about out here we have mountain lions in Northern California, and they tend to hunt by themselves, and they look for weak prey. So if you have this giant wolf that's following the same kind of pattern, it's out for something specific. It's probably an ambush predator. And that's just me talking about my knowledge of how cougars work and how, I don't know. So, side note, an aside here, Nahanni Valley is also referred to as the Valley of Headless Men. And we'll get to that in another episode, though, because it's a creepy place from what I've heard and some of the great stories we've come across doing this show over the years and listening to other podcasts and reading books. But it's interesting that the waheela would be there in that particular valley especially. So the next thing we want to talk about and touch upon, the next cryptid here, is the Shunka Warakin. It's an animal mentioned in American folklore, but the name comes from the Iowa term. And if I said Iowa wrong, it's the Iowa native tribe. I don't know if it's Iowa or whatnot. Meaning carries off dogs. It's said to resemble both a wolf and a hyena mixed together. So basically, it's a wolf and a hyena hybrid. Now that could be, I know that coyotes and wolves mate. We have these coy wolves that come down. I think they're actually mostly towards the Canadian border, the United States, and they're big. They're big-ass animals. And wolves in general, people forget how big wolves really are in real life. There's not these tiny, cute, little fuzzy little bastards we look at in the Disney movies. Yeah, they're beautiful, beautiful animals, don't get me wrong, but they're big. And the ones that aren't big are mean. The ones that aren't mean are food. So keep that in mind. That's kind of how this works. I know the Sierra Club has done a great job of just making wolves look like the prettiest, most pristine thing in the world. But, wolves have been a scourge against humans off and on for a long time. It's been a back and forth. And it's not like it's just their fault. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, so get off my ass, PETA. Not what I mean. But if you look at it realistically, you do not want to be in the woods with a pack of wolves because they are going to kill you. They're going to eat you. You're not going to survive that. There's a wolf thing going on in, I think, Oregon right now. I saw some news articles where now that the wolves are being more introduced widely, they're going after cattle and stuff. Well, why do you think we shot them in the first place? And I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying, keep in mind, guys, there is a back and forth here. And it's been that way for a long time. In France, even, way back in the day. And we'll get to that later with the Beast de Gévaudan, probably on the next part of this series. And a lot of Europe, wolves hunt man. They really do. I mean, it happens. So when we hunt them, they hunt us. It's kind of a give and take. That said, I don't want to get into a fight with a pack of wolves. I'm not a small guy. I'd make a lot of food for a couple of wolves. So now in 1896, Israel Ammon Hutchins. See, this is why I take notes. He shot an animal on what is now the Sun Ranch in Montana. It's been suggested by cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, who is awesome and writes extensively on these kind of things, and I suggest you check out his work, to be an example of the Shuka Warakan. Again, I'm probably butchering that, so I apologize. Ammon Hutchins sold it. He either sold it or gave it to this taxidermist, Joseph Sherwood. And that guy then mounted it and put it on display in his general store, also a museum. I think it's one of those quiche kind of, almost like a tourist trap kind of thing. But again, this is like 1890, so I guess we've been doing that forever. And anyway, it was in Henry's Lake, Idaho. Now, Sherwood, the taxidermist, named the beast Ringdicus. The trophy, if you would call it that, which I have. Look, I'm not against taxidermied animals you've taken out and whatnot. Like, I wouldn't hang them up. I'm all for using the entirety of the animal, but back then it's a different time, and this is just a weird animal. And you can find pictures of Ringdicus because in the 80s it disappeared. Now, and it resurfaced in like 2007. That said, it's never been tested for DNA stuff, and yes, there still would be probably DNA in the skin under the hair follicles, hypothetically. But this thing looks like one of those classic, someone messed with it taxidermy thing, like rogue taxidermy, but not quite so crazy, almost like they built it up. It's like a dude shoots a bear. There's an old Gary Larson Far Side comic where the guy's like hunting, and the bear's, I think it was either Gary, it was the Far Side or Rubes, I can't remember which one. But the bear's drinking some water peacefully. The guy shoots it, and the next panel is the guy's just sitting reading the newspaper, and the bear looks all arms up and claws out and crazy. And so, yeah, taxidermists might sometimes make it look like the hunt happened a little differently. And so that might be the case with Ringdicus, but also it could just be, a fraud. We don't know. It hasn't been tested. I think there was actually someone that denied it being tested. Anyway, it resurfaced again in 2007. So you can look that up. I would suggest it. Check out the pictures. It's kind of a strange looking thing, for sure. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is directly from Wikipedia because I'm not going to retain 90% of this, but I want you guys to get some good information on this because this is something that I actually am on the fence about. So the thylacine, now extinct according to records, it's one of the largest known carnivorous marsupials, evolving about 4 million years ago. The last known live animal was captured in 1933 in Tasmania. It's commonly known as the Tasmanian tiger because of its striped lower back, or the Tasmanian wolf because of its canid-like characteristics. It's a native to Tasmania, New Guinea, and the Australian mainland. The thylacine was relatively shy and nocturnal, with the general appearance of a medium to large-sized dog, except for its stiff tail and abdominal pouch, similar to a kangaroo, and dark transverse stripes that radiated from the top of its back, reminiscent of a tiger. The thylacine was a formidable apex predator, though exactly how large its prey animals were is disputed. They don't really know. That's my little aside there. Because of convergent evolution, it displayed a form and adaptations to the tiger and wolf of the northern hemisphere, even though not related at all. Its closest living relative is either the Tasmanian devil or the numbat. The thylacine was one of only two marsupials to have a pouch in both sexes, the other is being the water possum. The pouch of the male thylacine served as a protective sheath covering the external reproductive organs, which honestly, that's a pretty good idea. I would suggest covering your external reproductive organs at all costs. Now, you can actually see footage of the last Tasmanian tiger in captivity that we know of in captivity. They called him Benjamin. He died in captivity, probably of neglect, on September 7th of 1963. The last known was shot by a farmer in 1930. So, but there's pictures you can find more recently that show that maybe the Tasmanian tiger didn't bite the dust the way we think. There was actually an interesting movie. I can't remember the name of it. Willem Dafoe was in it. I think it was like The Hunter or something. And the movie was about a gal's husband goes to hunt the Tasmanian tiger, and this other hunter shows up, and it's or something like that, something to that effect. Google it. I can't remember. I should have wrote those in my notes, and I don't even remember the entire movie. I think it was maybe topping a couple down too much to remember it. But yeah, so I mean, you see pictures of these creatures that look like what might be the Tasmanian tiger shot like today, like recently. And even though phones are all blurry and stuff, some of these pictures look pretty legit comparatively. So it could be Photoshop. Who knows? Now, I don't think there's any cases really of Tasmanian tigers attacking people. I should look that up. But back then, I mean, they were already eradicating these poor creatures. So maybe they were just attacking their cattle or shooting them because they thought they'd make a good trophy. I don't know enough about the eradication of the Tasmanian tiger. Probably should have prepared that in the notes as well. But I didn't, so you miss out on that one. My apologies. Anyhow, now, there's an even stranger topic I want to get into. This one causes me grief endlessly. It causes, anytime you bring it up, it causes head shaking. And some of you who've been watching the show or listening to the show, for those of you watching the live stream or the podcast, I'm not live streaming this, but you're watching the video, and you're going to be watching for a while, you're going to know what I'm about to get into. So it causes a lot of speculation and head shaking. And it all seems to start in Elkhorn, Wisconsin in the 1930s. The Beast of Bray Road. I'm going to get there. A humanoid canid. A huge wolf that can walk on both two legs like a human. On both two legs? Did I really type that in my notes? Can walk on two legs like a human. A nocturnal creature standing over 7 feet tall and is very aggressive. Also known as Dogman. I know some of you guys saw that coming. Let me know. Email me if you saw that coming. That'd be great. Anyway, so this thing is insanely huge, insanely strong, fast. I mean, reports are it keeps up with cars that are trying to outrun it. There's reports of hunters in their tree stands getting ready to shoot a deer, and then the deer will run off. And they'll get the sense of dread. That always seems to be the thing that draws upon people, or that comes out of people when this creature is around, is a sense of immense dread and mortification, like they're terrified for their own life. They don't know what to think. They know stuff's going to go south, and they don't know how. And then this giant hulking thing, I guess 7 foot's not really giant when it's on its two legs, but this hulking beast will come in, and it will notice him. It will gnarl at him. It will gnash its teeth a little bit, and it will just stalk and stare, but it won't really attack. It'll take a moment to glare at him, and then the person will draw their gun on him and get to beat in a shot. And then it's like they'll hear the voice of this animal saying, "You don't want to do that. Don't do that." Before the animal finally meanders off or loses interest. There are stories from the southern parts of the United States where there are farms that are encroached by these creatures. These huge hulking beasts, some bigger than 7 foot tall on their legs, and some are said to take bullets like fucking you'd take a high five. Pardon my F word there, guys. I'm not going to edit that, but I'll try not to do that for a while. But yeah, they'll just bounce bullets off them. It won't affect them. And the sharp, huge claws that can drag into things, and people will see markings on trees from them like they were just ripped into. There's a couple stories of people that have seen these things like get a deer and throw it over its shoulder as it's walking on its hind legs. They also say the legs are kind of reverse kneed, kind of like a dog would, of course. And it's a creepy enough image on its own. But they're also these hugely muscular creatures, and they smell horrific from what some of the accounts say. But there's a lot of arguments. Well, not arguments. There's a lot of different stories about people's experiences with these dogmen, if you will. And it's led people like Lauren Coleman, who was a skeptic, essentially, and a reporter, a journalist, to really dedicate their lives to studying these sightings and what's going on. If you listen to any of the big time podcasts about the paranormal, and obviously I'm not including myself in that, but if you listen to any of these, they'll have tons of stories. There's actually websites based on dogman stories, people's encounters with the dogman, these huge animals that are both kind of like a combination between Bigfoot and human or in dog, or like a amalgamation of the three. There's also people that will argue crazy things like they're aliens and that Bigfoot are aliens and that one's a good guy and one's a bad guy. And hell, I couldn't tell you what to think about that. So you use your judgment there. I don't have an answer. I know it's creepy and I don't want to come across one. I know there's stories of hunters that have gone out, hired guides, and the guides wigged out, the hunters stayed, and they were around these things. I don't know that there's ever been a story that I've heard where someone's actually physically assaulted by one. It seems like they mostly stalk and annoy the crap out of people and mortify people. It sounds like almost they're just jerks that want to scare the crap out of you. As far as I know. So if you have stories that you've heard of this, let me know. I mean, these stories aren't just like in Wisconsin. They're in Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. I mean, they're like in the bayou. They're all over the place, these stories. And then parts of Canada, too. So if you have an encounter with a dogman, if you know someone that did, please let me know. Like any other topic at the Paranormal Unexplained. Just email me, vanishinggates@gmail.com, and send me your story. I would love to read it on the show. It's actually really cool because as much as I love doing this research and spending time doing these pseudo dives, because this isn't a deep dive for me, this is a pseudo dive. I spend a few hours doing research and I throw my notes together, but mostly my brain kind of functions the way it does, good or bad. But hearing other people's encounters and stories, that's the best part. And I don't want to say hate, but I don't like just pulling stories people have put online and reading them on the show, because it kind of takes away from, I don't know, it seems less genuine to me, because you can never tell online if someone just wrote a creepypasta or if it's their just short story sometimes. And I don't like taking away from other people's shows they've done. Now, if I hear someone on another podcast and I invite them on the show and they want to tell the same story, whole different ballgame. That's happened a couple times. I'm totally cool with that. That's why I invited you here. I enjoyed what you had to say. Thought maybe my audience would like to hear it, and that's the entire goal there. I am updates here now that we're moving on to the closing of the show, because we're getting out of time, because I'm trying to make things a little shorter so you guys have more time to listen. Paco and I are now looking at designing t-shirts, because Paco did a promise to everybody. We passed 500 followers on Facebook. Paco's going to make some t-shirts, and we're going to send them some people. I'm not sure how or who. I'm not sure who we're sending them to or how we're going to do it. We might do a drawing. We might do something. I don't know. But through the Facebook stuff for sure. Anyway, don't forget, please, to like, follow, share, subscribe, follow the Facebook page. If you're listening to us on the podcast channels, please give some kind of good review. I really appreciate it, and share it with your friends. That's how this is growing. In the last week, we've had huge growth, and it's pretty awesome. And I'm hoping it's partially because of the new format, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. So please feel free to give me feedback. You can message me even on the Facebook. I am not always answering every message on Facebook, but our tech guy, Nick, is also an admin there. And so either he or I will usually get back to you. I try to get back to people at least with a short answer within a few hours. My preferred method of contact, though, is the Gmail account. That's my email. It's the easiest way for me to get it. I check it 3 or 4 times a day, and I can actually respond that way. A lot easier than me trying to get through Facebook Messenger and whatnot, and Facebook Notes and all that. So if you'd go there, that'd be awesome. We also have our YouTube channel, so if you're listening on the podcast formats and you want to see what this beautiful, ugly ginger face looks like, you can check us out on YouTube. Vanishing Gates. Guess what? We're Vanishing Gates all across the board. So find us there. Now, the email again, Vanishing Gates, all one word, at gmail.com. YouTube, Vanishing Gates, two words. Facebook, 2 words. I've neglected Twitch in a sad way, but also 2 words on Twitch. Not that I'm going to upload this to Twitch. I could, but I haven't. That said, folks, thank you for listening to this installment of Vanishing Gates, and I hope that you join us for the next wonderful installment and download that as well and also rate that. We're going to be approaching the more human side of the werewolf theory. So we're not going to be talking so much about just cryptids, but we're going to go into the metamorphosis that Ovid talked about a little bit. Not exactly what he talked about, but we're going to talk about how a human might metamorph and some stories about that. At least that's my goal. I always set these plans and then I start reading. I start finding things that are a little more intriguing, so I might change that. I do want to give a huge shout out to the Paranormal Patriot podcast, Tom Velasquez's show. If you don't know who he is, if you haven't listened to his show yet, do yourself a favor and do. He's great at, he does really good production value. Me, I'm more of a get on the radio and pretend I'm a talk radio host guy, okay? I'm not, I don't do a lot of extra stuff. I don't edit my shows, obviously. I don't add bumper music. Maybe one day when I'm doing this professionally, but I do have a full-time job. Can't do that. So Tom does all of that, though. He has a full-time job, and he still manages to do a much awesome show. And I say much awesome, that's not even English, but I mean it. So check out Tom Velasquez and send him some love from Vanishing Gates. Tell him Jay sent you. And yeah, check him out. And if you're a gamer and you want to play some Xbox, hit me up. I'm on Mixer. Hit me up on Xbox here or there. Shoot me a message, though, to the Gmail account, and I might even add you. Anyway, that said, this has been Vanishing Gates. I am your host, Jay. I hope to talk to you very soon, and if the next episode doesn't come out before Halloween, it's only because of the power outage. I'll be doing research, and we will be doing the live stream from my front yard on Halloween as I hand out candy. Anyway, have a wonderful time. I'm Jay, and, for Jack and Paco, those guys, good nightmares.